So I kind of I've been reading this book by Jordan Peterson. He's this psychologist from Canada, and I saw a few of his YouTube clips before he was because he's become really big recently because he was on Channel 4 debate with Kathy Newman, and he basically I don't know how to describe it, but they were having a kind of debate, and she was he did very well in it. Let's just say that, and
Yeah.
it was all to do with his opinions on the pay gap and gender equality and things like that. But he held his ground really well, and she was really desperate in that position, and basically he released this book, and I've read it, and it just got a lot of enlightening points, and it kind of brings you back down to earth
Yeah.
in terms of some things. And he one of his rules is to he words it as to clean your room before you think you can change the world.
Yeah.
So the last point I put was, are we naive in thinking we can change the world? Like, especially us, students are very active in their opinions
Yeah.
of how they think the world can be, or how the world should be.
Yeah.
Yet they're only 20 years old, and they've barely lived. Well, and especially for most of their life, they've lived in the care of someone else, so they haven't really experienced the world for themselves, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah. I'm not really aware of his work because I haven't really had a chance to do much reading. But, like, students, because they've come into this sort of isolation now, they've come away from their parents, they're starting to build their own ideas, they start to feel like they can change more. Like, I personally feel like that as well. Like, I'd love to, like, state my opinion and stuff, but there's only so many ways we can do it, and we are naive to feel like we can change the world, because at the end of the day, our voice as an individual will not be heard. It'll sort of be laughed down in a way. But the fact that we're getting more and more online petitions coming out, with people like that, because there was something about the strikes earlier on in Manchester. I saw one of my friends had signed a protest about getting some money back from the university because of the strike. And like that sort of thing is good, because it is sort of changing the way, showing, okay, you're affecting our education, so we want a little bit of a refund back from that. Not really sure how much money it was, but they wanted a refund because it was a strike, like out of their hands. It was in the hands of the university. But to think that we could change the world is naive, because as an individual we're no one. But if it's a group of people, and it has to be a large group of people, we can sort of start to change it by getting our opinion voiced in Parliament, getting our opinion voiced on the news, like getting people going. Because this is where, like, a bit of a radical thing, but it's where, like, a lot of these terrorist groups come from. Because if one person was just saying that, it'd get nowhere. But because it's a group of people radicalising people, they're able to get somewhere. I know it's a bit of extreme circumstance, but
but
they are changing the world.
No, yeah, and I think trying to change the world, I wouldn't like put people off doing it by posing this question, but I think the kind of the Western world we live in isn't so bad compared to other places in the world, and people are still trying to like call for like equality.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much more equality some of these minorities want, because I feel living in England today, I know I'm white and male, and that's the dominant thing, but I feel like some of these minorities, this is just my opinion, I feel like some of them kind of like playing the victim in some sense and push for more and more, but at the moment I'm not really sure what they're trying to push for.
Yeah, like I have like seen stuff like that. I'm not saying I don't 100% disagree with what you said, but at the same time, there's only like so much we can do to help people. Like, in order for us to help people, people got to help themselves as well. Like, we can't be expected to just fight everyone's corner if they don't give anything back, which is, I think most people can accept, is a perfectly reasonable deal. It's like if someone offered to fight your corner, they'd expect something back in return. And like, but changing the world is not something that's not going to happen overnight. You need to take time to do it. And like, yeah, and like these minority groups who may or may not look to play the victim, I don't think they are trying to personally. I just feel like they're voicing their opinion, and this all comes back to freedom of speech. Because there's that opportunity for them to voice their opinion, which is great. They're having this opportunity. They're voicing their opinion, and people disagree, and that's which is great about freedom of speech, because it allows discussion to happen.
Yeah, I'm all for discussion, but there's I'm all for live and let live. You know, they can do what they want. They can love someone of the same sex. They can change their sex if they want. Like, more power to them. I just think when I heard in Canada they're trying to. I haven't looked too much into it, but they're trying to push these like pronoun laws, where you have to call people by their preferred pronoun, and I think it's reaching a point where it is kind of interfering with other people's way of living, and I just think, personally, I think all this gender isn't binary is kind of a bit. It's all a bit not hypocritical. It just doesn't make sense to me, and there's a reason. I think there's just a reason why we've decided in our society that there is men, women in terms of gender, because it just simplifies the world for us. And although people say there's this new thing going around that there's like 64 genders or whatever, it just doesn't make sense to me.
I can understand, like, with Canada, with them pushing through the preferred like title through, because like we're getting to that stage where people should be allowed to say if they're a female that they want to have a sex change and say they're a man, or vice versa. People should be allowed to voice that, because at the end of the day, we're voicing opinions, and we're allowing freedom of speech. We're allowing people to say that they want to be known as a different person, a different gender, which is brilliant. And like, it shouldn't matter what your title is. At the end of the day, it should matter. The title shouldn't matter. It's the person who should matter. If you get on with the person, it shouldn't matter if they're male, female, transgender, gay, straight. It shouldn't matter. All that matters is you and that person get along fine.
Yeah, but the thing that's coming up is, it's back to this people being offended by things. It's like, so you see this person and they look more like a male, say, than a female, and you say, "Oh, him over there," and then he gets offended by that because you called him because you assumed their gender. But it's just us making sense of the world as humans. Like, when we see someone who looks more masculine, we're gonna call him a him. And people, I know there's this thing going around where even making up these new pronouns like "zer" and "z," which I just don't personally agree with using, and I just think it's just a bit difficult for me to comprehend anyway, with these new kind of, you can be any gender you want. Like, some people even think like you can, like, pizza can be your gender, which is it just gets a bit ridiculous then.
But going back to that point where you said about how if you see someone who looks like a man, you're probably going to call them he or Mr. or something like that. There was an example in the school of a teacher, who said to two children, "Well done, girls," but one of them preferred to be referred to as a man, or I think it was something like that. And the teacher got suspended, and then I think subsequently fired from the job, just because he presumed and said what a lot of people would say, said, "Well done, girls, keep up the good work." Just something as simple as that. I mean, that may or may not be 100% correct, but I remember something in the news about that. And, like, you can understand why people do get offended by that, because they've taken a big change in their life, they're taking a big step. But, like, I don't want to say people who say that pizza is their gender are weird people, but it's not something that I would personally think about. Like, I love a pizza, great food, but I wouldn't say that pizza is my gender.
No, it's like you can't. I don't know. There's like you can't base like people pushing for laws and stuff, but you can't base like some of this on just the way you feel.
Yeah.
And you can't twist facts, or you can't make facts on things. You can't make facts on feelings. I don't think. Like if you feel a certain way, feel that way, but just don't force other people to, or don't like instantly assume people are just going to be okay with you being your gender being pizza.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't make it just gets a bit. It does get a bit ridiculous and weird at times.
This all just comes back to freedom of speech, and with people being allowed it, people will get offended. But we got to build up a tolerance towards people being offended and people being allowed to voice their own opinion. They need to find that balance, and that is really what you've just got to strive to get. And like I feel like we're getting there closer, but we're still. Every time we take a step forward, we might take 2 steps back. And like we just got to try and find that happy medium there, which I think is going to be possible. But we've just got to try and everyone's got to work together to try and get to that boundary.
I think offensive being offended is a necessary component of then opening it up to conversation. But just because you're offended, I don't think you should just block things out. You should.
You shouldn't block people.
You need to be open.
Out.
You need to be open to the fact that people do have different opinions to you. I aren't going to agree with everything you say. And at the end of the day, I just think some people just expect a lot in this world, and it's not. It's just the world is a difficult place to live in, and it's not just going to be some utopia. It's always going to like being a human is a struggle. It's just a constant struggle, and I think a lot of people think like these minorities group. I think assume that because you're a white male, you're just going to succeed in life, and when you get these obviously that white males dominate high positions in firms and in different industries, but I think sometimes a lot of their work is discredited just because the fact they are white and male. Some people think they've just walked into that position, yet no one really takes into account the fact that they have worked there. Like
they haven't just walked in; they've worked their way through up the company. Like they haven't just gone, and like a lot of people think, because someone's child might be working there, they're immediately going to get there. That's not necessarily the case. Like people work hard, work up through the ranks to get to that position, and they're not just going to throw it away. Like. When it comes to that sort of thing, I personally feel like both people of minorities and people of different backgrounds have an equal opportunity to work their way up to the main job. It's just that the company pick the person who's the best person for that job. They're not going to pick someone who is a minority just to look good if that person is not going to be able to progress the company on.
No, my dad was I was discussing with my dad, and he's quite high up in a company, and he sees that there's a lot of this kind of positive discrimination for minorities, where some of these big companies are looking for minorities to hire so that they can say, oh look, we have X amount of minorities in our
look at us.
And it kind of then becomes switched on the person who is white and male, and they it's going to become almost harder for them, which I just think if you just got to pick who's best for the job, and and just prove that you have picked that person.